we can go on a solo run.
But
is that what you're saying, Philippe? We can go on a solo run.
2 years ago, we were promised legislation 2 years ago to deal with the issue of how you actually deal with a bank that isn't functioning. We still haven't got that legislation. I understand under the memorandum of agreement that has been negotiated between the EU, the IMF and the Irish government, that this is going to be a crucial issue now.
Minister, a lot of the people out there, the people who are commentating negatively about your government's control of all of this, they've suggested, as Philippe has, the debt for equity swap. Why was that not entertained?
A whole range of options were looked at.
But why was that particular one, where they can safeguard their own money by making the banks work again?
It amounts to a default, Pat. And the word default has never been used in the context of the sovereign government, and particularly in the euro. Now, if you were asking Ireland to do that, I mean, I've tried to deal with that question.
It would be bank. It would be bank.
But it's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. So it's inevitably going to be understood as a sovereign default.
Catastrophic mistake that Brian Lenihan made was to nationalise Anglo and therefore take Anglo's debts and turn them into taxpayers' debts. That was a catastrophic mistake.
Not do a deal at the time.
But hang on a second. Wait a minute. You know, it's an awful lot of hindsight being exercised in this studio and in every commentary about this, and everybody is an expert in what should have happened.
Barry.
Now, we are in a position... Sorry, let me just finish this point. We're in a position now where we have to...
would not invest in Anglo at the time, before the collapse. Now, what did Michael Summers know that you guys pretend you didn't know?
Look, I mean, we've been through this 100 times. Both the Governor of the Central Bank and the NTMA have advised, and Governor Honohan, in his analysis of what had gone wrong in the banking sector, acknowledged that a guarantee was required at that time.
2 years ago.
That has been put in the public domain.
2 years ago, people involved in the banking industry in this country, as well as my own party and other parties, argued that continuing to put good money into this defunct bank was a huge catastrophic mistake.
We're back to 2008.
We've
we're not
that
going to
point,
get that
but we
back.
want to focus on you guys because with the most optimistic view of Fianna Fáil's prospects, they're not going to be in power. You are going to be in power. So what exactly are you going to do with this IMF EU bailout package? What are you going to do come February or March? What are you going to do?
Well, we will seek a renegotiation of elements of the package, but we haven't seen the memorandum yet, and I think the devil is in the detail.
No, but they've set their faces against burning in any shape or form the bondholders.
What Governor Honohan said today, and Mr. Chopin said this morning on behalf of the IMF is this: any incoming government can attempt to review or negotiate
bits and pieces.
Yes, as long as the parameters remain the same.
And they set their faces against burning the bondholders. That's a parameter.
I think it is the case that if this was an exclusive deal with the IMF, that would not be the position. But unfortunately, the EU sold out on that issue.
Let's hear some voices in the audience. Yes, in the front row. What do you want to say?
Pat, thanks very much. We have so many strong cards to play in this. I mean, just think a few months ago, the European Central Bank passed the stress test for the Irish banks. So the European Central Bank said our banks are okay. Mohamed El Irani, who runs PIMCO, the largest fund management company in the world, which buys our bonds, said we have to burn the senior bondholders because they won't get their money back if we don't. Nouriel Roubini, Paul Krugman, we have leading voices on our hands supporting the position to burn the bondholders, but oh no, Mr. Lehman Brothers over here says we have to stop contagion. European Central Bank got it wrong. His government got it wrong. The markets, the talented people, the economists and Nobel Prize winners are telling us burn the senior bondholders. Do it.
Down from him and also in the front row. What do you want to say?
It just strikes me that this current plan that we've got won't work simply because it can't. We've got 100 billion of sovereign debt, added onto that 100-odd billion of bank debt, and we simply don't have the resources to pay this back. So it strikes me that there's two options being discussed here. One is burn the bondholders, which I'm quite in favour of. The second option, though, is if
would you care, though, if it brings the whole euro project tumbling down, burning the bondholders?
Not necessarily, no. If it's negotiated across the EU, and the press, I mean...
What you're saying is the EU has to agree, look, in order to sort this problem out, we've got to restructure the whole banking system, and that includes giving the bondholders 60 cents in the euro or whatever it might be.
Well, I mean, the alternative is we've got contagion across the entire eurozone.
OK. Man behind you, what do you want to say?
Yeah, Pat, I think what we have really here is a comedy that's turned into a farce that's going to have very serious implications. The reason being, this is a crisis that politicians are pretending that just happened the last week. We had a Colin McCarthy report that was issued in July 2009, which was on about how serious the situation the country was in, and if we didn't put in certain actions then, the country would go down to perdition. Those actions weren't done. The government hasn't shown leadership in that time. So we're left in the situation now where we're in a position where the minister is saying at the moment that he can't guarantee what will happen in the future. No one can guarantee what will happen in the future. If we do, but if we go down the road we are going down, we are absolutely going to be in trouble.
Can I go back to the Minister? Minister, again and again we're hearing that the ECB has also erred very badly. For instance, you know, in September they provided Anglo with money to pay off senior bondholders. You know, they stress tested Irish banks and said they were fine, thank you very much. They made lots of mistakes. Before all of this happened, they gave the Irish banks the all clear to borrow so much money that they got themselves into massive amounts of trouble. Why are they punishing us when the blame truly has to be shared?
Well, I think there is...
Because they can.
No, I think the sharing exercise is going on. You know, the European Central Bank...
5.8%?
Sorry, they're funding our banks on a daily basis so that we can pay our guards, our nurses, our teachers, so that we pay pensions. That is a fact, Pat, and they're continuing to do that as a lender of last resort and have committed to continue to do that. So, you know, we have to look at the 5.8% in that context as well. We have to look at that 5.8% in that context.
It's actually more than that because there are three elements to this package, but on the issue of Klaus Rehling's fund, his emergency fund, he is borrowing that money at 3% and charging us 6%. The IMF are significantly less than that. If they were really serious, no, I'm not suggesting.
No, hang on. If they were really serious, if it was a friendly act, they would not be charged.
If they were serious, it would be much lower.
It is evidently a discounted rate because what we would be paying in the open market, if we were in the market now, would be extremely high compared to what we're being offered. And the last time we were in the bank,
Brian Hayes, doesn't the minister have a point that if we were thrown at the markets now, 9.7%? Now we don't actually need to borrow yet, and I know that, so don't make that point. But that's the market rate at the moment. 5.8% in that context is manageable.
Well, is it manageable, Pat, where there is no growth in the economy? I see today the European Commission have said that growth they predict is going to be 0.9% next year, where Minister Andrew's government have said it's going to be 1.7% next year.
ESRI are saying about 3%, particularly healthy in the latter years of the plan.
I mean, listen, without growth, we're going downhill fast. We have got to get a growth and jobs strategy. And the big problem with this whole plan is this, that the money that was set aside, that we could actually do that, our taxpayers' money in our pension reserve, you have frittered away by you threw in the first card in those negotiations.
Pat, the reality is
that was the money that we needed to a stimulus and a jobs plan that you have thrown away.
You cannot, on the one hand, talk about sustainable growth and the creation of jobs in this economy and still talk about default, because it's going to have a seismic effect on the European financial system. People have to understand that there is a connection between those two things.
You do it by agreement.
Talk about otherwise
is
self-delusion. We are a small player, but we're a very open economy. And this man here, Philippe, has written extensively on that and the fact that Ireland is one of the most open economies. So if you really think that by applying some default into the financial system from this country, that it won't have an impact on people like Pat who's trying to make
irresponsible by defaulting on the senior bondholders, that it will have implications right throughout the Irish economy. There will be no funding for all sorts of things, at least in the medium term. We may get back the ability to borrow in time, but in the medium term, the economy will be decimated.
Well, the point is that your banks already are decimated. They're zombie banks. They're draining the life out of the economy. And the Irish state itself doesn't need to default. As I said, it's as long as it separates, it needs to separate and say, listen, we made a mistake. We stepped in to try and save the banks. In fact, the banks are too big a burden. They're dragging down the Irish state. Cut the banks loose, and actually Ireland will be in a much better position.
Can we do that while safeguarding people's deposits, small savers, people who have a few bob in the bank? Can we protect them while allowing the banks to go down?
The Irish banks still have access to finance from the ECB, and what this package does is it replaces cheap liquidity from the ECB for very expensive finance, ultimately taxpayers' money.
Because we know that the ECB wanted out of that particular arrangement with the Irish banks. Noel,